Have you ever wondered that a single cry from a newborn child once changed the fate of the heavens? Before the thunder roared, before Mount Olympus rose in glory, there was only a whisper, hidden deep in the caves of Crete, a prophecy that made even the skies tremble. A father who swallowed his own children, a mother who dared to defy destiny, and a child who turned lightning into his weapon. High voltage. This isn't just the story of Zeus. It's the story of rebellion, love, and divine power, where fear bowed its head, and light was born straight out of darkness. So, take a deep breath, let the world go quiet around you, and drift with me, back to the age when even gods could bleed, and the sound of thunder was the heartbeat of creation. Because tonight, you're not just hearing a myth, you're stepping into the moment when a newborn became a king, Zeus, the true king of the gods. If you enjoy calm, mysterious stories from the ancient world, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next hidden legend. And drop a comment below with your city and the time you're watching. Let's see where in the world this story finds you tonight. The night was dark and heavy, the kind of silence that feels alive, like the air itself is waiting for something to break. Thunder rolled over the horizon. The sky trembled, and in that tension between lightning and stillness, a new legend was about to begin. At the center of it all stood Kronos, the Titan king, the ruler of time itself. To the world, he was unstoppable, a god among gods, whose voice could shake the heavens and whose shadow stretched across eternity. But even kings have fears, and for Kronos that fear had a name, prophecy. It was whispered that one day, his own son would rise against him and take everything, his throne, his power, his eternity. And so, fear turned into madness. Each time his wife, Rhea, gave birth, Kronos made sure that prophecy would never come true. He swallowed every newborn child. Alive, their cries disappeared into darkness, and the silence that followed haunted the heavens. First came Hestia, gone. Then Demeter, then Hera, then Hades, then Poseidon. One by one devoured. The great Titan king ate his future to protect his present. And Rhea, she wept in secret, her heart shattered, but her mind kept burning with one thought. If the gods won't stop him, then I will. When her sixth child was born, the earth seemed to pause. A storm rolled through the sky, as if even the universe sensed what had just arrived. That child was Zeus, and Rhea, broken, desperate, but clever, decided that this child would not share his siblings' fate. She wrapped a stone in cloth, gave it to Kronos, and while the Titan devoured it without a glance, she took her newborn and fled into the mountains of Crete. There, hidden among nymphs and the whispers of the forest, the boy who would one day rule Olympus grew stronger with every breath. Zeus learned to listen to the wind, to command the storm. He was raised by nature itself, fed by divine milk, trained by the rhythm of thunder. And as he grew, so did his anger. He knew what Kronos had done. He knew the world was broken by fear. And one night, staring into the endless sky, he made a promise to himself. I will end the age of tyranny. I will free my blood. I will reclaim what time has stolen. Years later, Zeus returned, not as a boy, but as a storm wearing human skin. He walked into Kronos' grand hall disguised as a servant. The Titan king, older now, smug and cruel, didn't even look at him. Zeus poured his father a drink. Smooth, golden, poisoned with justice. Kronos raised the cup, laughed, and drank deeply. And then, the world shook. A violent roar filled the skies as the Titan doubled over. He tried to speak, but instead, he vomited out what he had swallowed so long ago. One by one, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon emerged from darkness, reborn into light. The children of Kronos were free, and their eyes burned with vengeance. Zeus stood before them and said, "This ends tonight." And so began the Titanomachy, the war that shattered eternity. The heavens split open, mountains caught fire, oceans raged, and the earth itself screamed under the weight of divine fury. For 10 years, gods and titans clashed. Thunder met stone, flame met shadow. Every strike was the echo of creation itself. The war was endless until Zeus decided it wouldn't be. He rose above the battlefield, lightning swirling in his hands. The sky turned white. Time seemed to freeze. And with one final blinding strike, Zeus threw his thunderbolt straight into his father's chest. The explosion was like the birth of a new world. Kronos fell, the titans crumbled, and silence, real absolute silence, filled the air for the first time in 10 years. When the smoke cleared, the throne stood empty, and Zeus, the sun once hidden in the shadows, stepped forward into the light. He had won. Kronos was cast into Tartarus, the deepest pit of the underworld, where time no longer had meaning, and for the first time in all of creation, a new order was born. Zeus became king of the gods. The skies became his crown. Thunder became his voice. And the age of the Titans was over. But even in his victory, Zeus felt something heavy, a whisper in his chest that said, "Power never comes without a price, because once you become a god, your greatest enemy isn't someone else. It's yourself, your pride, your fear, your need to stay on top no matter what." The war had ended, but Zeus's real battle was only beginning. And every time thunder rolls across the sky, every flash of lightning that cuts through the dark, is not just a storm, it's a reminder that power may rule the heavens, but it always remembers where it came from. When the storm of war finally broke, and the Titans fell into silence, a new dawn rose over the shattered heavens. The age of Kronos had ended. The reign of Zeus had begun. But peace, true peace, is never born in the shadow of war. Even as the skies cleared, the world trembled beneath the weight of something new. Power. Zeus stood atop Mount Olympus, the air around him alive with lightning. Below, the earth stretched endlessly, valleys glowing in the sunrise, seas glimmering like liquid glass. For the first time, the heavens had a king who was not a titan, a god who had earned his crown through rebellion, not inheritance. And that changed everything. With his brothers and sisters beside him, Poseidon, lord of the seas, Hades, keeper of the underworld, Hera, the goddess of the skies, Demeter of the harvest, and Hestia of the flame, Zeus began to rebuild the universe. But unity among gods is a fragile thing. Each had fought for freedom, Now they fought for purpose. Zeus divided the world. To Poseidon he gave the oceans, the deep, roaring veins of the earth. To Hades, the underworld, the quiet, endless realm of shadows. And to himself, the heavens, the sky where thunder lived, where justice could be delivered in a single flash of light. At first, harmony thrived. The gods built palaces of white marble that shimmered above the clouds. Rivers of gold flowed through their halls, and the air itself seemed to hum with divine music. Mortals below looked up in awe, whispering prayers to their new rulers. But slowly, the old fears began to stir again, because even gods can be haunted, and Zeus, the mighty king, was not immune to the ghosts of power. He had seen what Kronos became when prophecy whispered against him. He had seen how fear can twist a god's heart into something monstrous. And deep down, he knew if the universe could overthrow one king, it could overthrow another. So Zeus made a vow. He would never fall like his father did. But the harder he tried to hold on to power, the more it began to slip through his fingers. At first, it was small, a whisper of rebellion among the gods. Some thought Zeus too proud, too controlling. Others envied his power over lightning, calling him the storm tyrant. Then came Prometheus, the titan who defied Zeus's new order by giving fire to mankind. Fire, the gift of knowledge, the spark of civilization. It was a small flame, but to Zeus it felt like betrayal. He saw in that act the same defiance that once burned in his own eyes when he rose against Kronos. Terrified him. So he punished Prometheus, chained him to the edge of a mountain, where every day an eagle would tear into his flesh, and every night his wounds would heal, only to begin again. An eternal punishment for an eternal lesson. Power must be obeyed, even by gods. But Zeus's heart was more complex than his thunder. He was not just a tyrant, he was a creator, a lover, a protector. His gaze often turned toward the mortal world, fascinated by their courage, their vulnerability, their fleeting lives. And so began the stories of Zeus descending to earth not as a god, but as a man cloaked in disguise. Of him falling in love with mortal women, fathering heroes and demigods, beings who walked between heaven and earth, carrying fragments of his divine fire. Each story brought new glory to Olympus, but also new chaos, because every child of Zeus carried a spark of defiance, the same spark that once burned in him. And among the gods, that defiance grew like wildfire. Hera, his wife and queen, became consumed by jealousy, her love twisted by betrayal, her devotion turned to vengeance. She punished mortals and demigods alike, trying to erase every trace of Zeus's disloyalty. Olympus began to fracture. What had been a kingdom of light turned into a throne of storms. Zeus ruled with strength and fury, but inside, he was still that child who had watched his father devour his siblings. He knew that power, once gained, demanded constant defense. He trusted no one completely, not even himself. One night, lightning tore across the sky, not from anger but from grief. Zeus stood on the edge of Olympus, watching the mortal world below, their fires flickering like stars. Maybe, he whispered to the wind, the world was never meant to be ruled, only guided. But the wind gave no answer, only the echo of thunder rolling across the mountains, as if the heavens themselves were laughing at his doubt. Still, in that quiet moment, a new kind of wisdom was born in him. He began to see the world not as a kingdom to dominate, but as a delicate balance between power and mercy, fear and love. He learned that the strength of a god wasn't measured by how many storms he could summon, but by how much peace he could create after they passed. And that realization changed Zeus forever. From that day, he became not just the god of thunder, but the guardian of order, the keeper of justice among gods and men. He established laws, oaths, and divine promises that even immortals could not break. He became the balance between chaos and creation, the heartbeat of Olympus itself. Yet, somewhere deep inside, the storm still lived, because the story of Zeus was never about peace alone. It was about the eternal struggle between power and purpose, between what you can control and what you must let go. And so, whenever thunder rumbles through the night sky and lightning cuts through the clouds, remember, it's not just a storm. It's the echo of a king who once fought the heavens, who conquered time itself, and who still watches over the world, balancing chaos with calm, and reminding us that even gods were once afraid of the dark. The sky was quiet that night, the kind of quiet that hums before a storm. Zeus stood upon the marble edge of Olympus, his eyes lost in the endless blue of creation. Below him, the mortal world shimmered, tiny fires glowing in the dark, like scattered stars fallen to earth. He had built it all. He ruled it all. And yet he was not at peace. Power, once tasted, had filled the emptiness of his heart. But power was not enough, because what Zeus craved, what he feared, was love. A love that would not bow, would not tremble, would not see him as a god, but as something human, and that was the beginning of his greatest weakness. Hera, his queen, watched him from the throne beside his own. Her beauty was sharp as moonlight, her eyes fierce, her smile cold. She had loved him once. She had believed his promise, that together they would bring order to a world drowning in chaos. But she had learned that even a god's promise could crack under desire. Zeus's heart was restless. Each glance from a mortal woman, each whisper from a nymph, each song of a muse, pulled him away from Olympus, away from her. And so began the stories of Zeus transforming himself into shapes of wonder and deceit, of storms and golden rain, of bulls and swans, of fire and light. Each disguise was a confession. Each love was a rebellion against the loneliness of a god. He became a shower of gold for Danae, a mortal princess locked away by her father, terrified of prophecy. Through the shimmer of divine light, she bore him a son, Perseus, who would one day slay monsters and carve legends into stone. He became a swan for Leda, a symbol of grace and contradiction, where tenderness hid divine power. From her union came Helen, the woman whose beauty would ignite 1,000 ships and burn an empire. He became a bull for Europa, gentle eyes hiding the strength of a god. He carried her across the seas, her laughter echoing through the winds, her fear turning to trust, her trust to love. And for each of these moments, each mortal heartbeat that dared to love a god, Hera's fury grew stronger, not just out of jealousy, but because every act of Zeus's love defied the balance she had sworn to protect. She was not blind to his charm. She knew the truth. that his heart sought connection, not conquest. But to her, every mortal he touched became a scar upon Olympus, and so she became vengeance itself. She cursed the women, twisted the fates of their children, and made sure that every reminder of Zeus's desire would come at a price. Mortals began to fear her name more than his thunder. They built temples not for devotion, but for mercy. And through it all, Zeus said nothing. He did not rage against her. He did not beg her to stop, because deep down he knew her anger was not madness. It was heartbreak. There were nights when thunder would roll softly, not in fury but in grief, and Hera would look toward the horizon where her husband's lightning painted the sky, and whisper to herself, "I was his first storm." But love, in the hands of immortals, is not soft. It's eternal, and that is its curse. The mortals who loved Zeus aged and faded. Their beauty turned to dust, their voices to memory. Yet Zeus remembered every one of them. He remembered their laughter, their fear, their hands reaching for him in the dark, and he carried those memories like scars, not of shame, but of longing. Because for all his power, Zeus could not stop time. He could not keep love from ending. And that realization, that even gods could lose what they love, made him both greater and smaller at once. There were moments when he would walk the mortal lands in disguise, just to feel their world again, to watch mothers cradle their children, to see lovers whisper under the stars, to remember what it meant to be fragile. And in those moments, the king of gods became something closer to human, not in body but in spirit. He learned that love is not about control, but surrender, not about forever, but the fleeting beauty of now. And yet, the cycle never truly ended. Hera would rage, Zeus would wander, and the world would tremble beneath their storm of love and wrath. Every thunderclap became a symbol of the passion that could both create and destroy. Their story shaped the heavens. Every lightning strike was his heartbeat. Every rainbow after the rain, her forgiveness. Because for all their battles, for all their betrayals, Hera and Zeus remained bound, not by loyalty but by destiny. Two forces that could never exist without the other. Order and chaos, love and rage, heaven and storm. And through their endless dance, the world below learned what the gods had always known. That love, in its truest form, is both a blessing and a curse. Sometimes it builds empires, sometimes it burns them to ash, but it always leaves something behind. A story, a name, a memory that refuses to fade. So when you hear thunder rolling through the night, and the air hums with the scent of rain, remember, it's not just weather. It's the echo of Zeus searching for love in a world that could never truly hold him. The voice of Hera, still calling his name through the storm, and the reminder that even the gods, for all their immortality, were still chasing the one thing they could never truly control, the human heart. The age of gods was fading, not with an explosion, not with a final war, but with silence, a silence that felt heavier than thunder. For centuries, Zeus had ruled the heavens, his lightning a symbol of authority, his name a whisper that could both bless and terrify. But now that thunder seemed tired. The mortals below had changed. Their temples, once filled with golden offerings and chants of praise, stood empty, dust gathering where faith once lived. They had begun to look elsewhere, to new gods, new ideas, new skies to pray beneath. And Zeus watched. From the peak of Olympus, he saw the fires go out one by one. He heard no hymns, no prayers calling his name, only the wind moving through the broken columns of forgotten temples. It was strange, he thought, how eternity could feel so short. The other gods had drifted away, Aphrodite to the seas, Apollo to the stars, Ares to the echoes of battlefields long silent. Even Hera's rage had softened into quiet. She no longer fought, no longer burned with jealousy or pride. Perhaps she, too, was tired of being eternal. For the first time, Zeus stood truly alone. The sky was still his, but the world below no longer belonged to him. Humans had taken it, reshaped it, built their own empires upon the ruins of Olympus. And in their stories, Zeus was no longer a god. He was a myth, a name, a lesson. He wandered among them unseen, a whisper in the rain, a flicker of lightning behind clouds. He watched them fall in love, build cities, wage wars. The same passions he had once embodied now alive in mortal hearts. And that realization brought him something he had never known before. Peace, because Zeus understood now that his legacy wasn't carved in marble or sung in temples. It lived in them, in every spark of courage, every act of defiance, every heartbeat that dared to challenge fate. That was what the thunder had always meant. Not fear but power. Not control but the fire to rise again. He remembered Prometheus, the titan who had stolen his fire for mankind. How furious he had been then. How he had punished him without mercy. But now, standing beneath the vast, star-filled sky, Zeus finally understood. Prometheus hadn't stolen fire. He had simply passed it on. The light of Olympus wasn't lost. It had been shared. Every candle in a mortal home, every forge that built their cities, every spark that illuminated the night, was his gift, living on in hands that no longer feared the gods. There was beauty in that. A strange, bittersweet beauty. Sometimes, when storms rolled over the earth, Zeus would send a single bolt of lightning down, not to destroy, but to remind them that somewhere above the clouds, the old gods still watched, not with jealousy, but with pride. He knew that someday even Olympus itself would crumble, the marble eaten by time, the statues broken, the names forgotten, but the stories would never die, because mortals had a way of keeping what mattered most, not in temples, but in memory. And so Zeus became more than a god. He became a symbol of strength, of justice, of thunder and consequence. They would tell his tales to their children, not out of fear, but to remind them that power, unchecked, always carries a price, that even gods can fall, that even immortality can fade. And in those moments of remembrance, when someone would look up at the sky during a storm and whisper, "The gods are speaking again," Zeus would smile, because that was enough. He didn't need worship. He didn't need temples. He only needed to be remembered. He would visit the ruins sometimes, places where his name was once carved deep into stone. He would touch the cracks with his hand, feeling how the earth had swallowed them. And though the world had forgotten his thunder, He found comfort in that silence, because silence too is eternal. They say that one night, as a great storm rolled over Greece, a flash of lightning split the sky, brighter than any seen before, and when it faded, the air was calm, the rain stopped, and from that night onward, the thunder became softer, not gone, but gentler, like an echo fading into history. Some believe that was the night Zeus left Olympus, not in defeat, but in peace. He had ruled, he had loved, he had raged, and now he simply rested. They say he walks among us still, not as a god of thunder, but as the quiet force that moves us to stand tall, to fight injustice, to love without fear, because that was his true legacy, not power over the world, but the spark he left within it. And maybe that's why, even now, when the clouds roll dark and the air begins to hum, something inside us still stirs, something ancient, something divine. It's not fear, it's recognition, a whisper that says, somewhere he still watches, the king of the gods, no longer on a throne of marble, but in the thunder that rolls through time itself, unseen, unheard, but never forgotten, because legends don't die, they transform. And Zeus, the father of gods, the breaker of fate, the keeper of fire, did not fall. He simply became what he always was, a storm that never truly ends,